We're going to move on to ex-officer charged with manslaughter in the killing of Dante Wright.
Breaking news.
I'm going to take a break from the trial of Officer Derek Chauvin to bring you other important breaking news from a nearby suburb. CNN has now learned the former Brooklyn Center, Minnesota police officer Kim Potter is being charged in the killing of Dante Wright. Our CNN correspondent Adrian Broaddus is live from Brooklyn Center. Adrian, walk us through what we know.
Well, John, we know the Washington County prosecutor has told CNN he will charge that officer, Kim Potter, with second-degree manslaughter. Here in Minnesota, under the state statute, if someone is convicted of second-degree...
Oh, sorry. Before we move on to this, I got to run an ad. Fuck. Or I'm going to keep playing the video, but you already know what the deal is. If you no longer want to see ads, if you want to have free broadcasting experience, it is top of the hour. You can subscribe. You can do it for $5, or you can subscribe for free by connecting your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account. Here's the ad now. I'm keeping the video going.
The penalty is no more than 10 years or a fine up to $20,000. For those of you who may just be tuning in, Potter is the officer who was once here with the Brooklyn Center Police Department for 26 years. She fired the shot that ended the life of 20-year-old Dante Wright. The former police chief here in Brooklyn Center told us she did not mean to fire that shot. She pulled her gun out instead of her taser. On that body cam video that was released soon after the incident occurred, you could hear the officer saying to Mr. Wright in the car, "I'm going to tase you. I'm going to..."
I think part of the reason why it's not a higher charge is because it would have been way harder to stick a higher charge there because of all the times where she like literally fucking clearly feels as though she is using a taser in the situation. I don't know if she genuinely wanted to act like she wanted to, or I don't know if she genuinely wanted to kill a black person. I think the negligence there is that, and the fear there is that the person is black, and the reason for why why Dante Wright was stopped is literally DWB, okay? But ultimately the intent is going to be very difficult to prove in court, especially when there's a lot of evidence, at least, that will play out in the court of law as though she legitimately thought it was a taser.
To tase you, and then that was followed by taser.
Define DWB, driving while black. That's what I was saying. It's a lighthearted way to describe a horrific and tragic thing that occurs all the time, which is black people get fucking stopped for ridiculous shit when they're driving because people assume that they're suspicious. In this circumstance, was expired tags along with having air fresheners that was obstructing his view.
Taser, and yelling taser, taser, taser is what officers are supposed to do before they deploy.
So you want a higher charge that goes against the evidence? No, I want justice. And I think I'm not one to advocate for more draconian measures. I want justice. Someone's life was taken, and I want someone to feel the accountability of their actions in order for others to also recognize that they can't get away with murdering people and just say, oh, I thought it was a fucking taser. Okay? That's what I want. And I'm not saying eye for an eye. I don't want her to be murdered. I don't want her to fucking be in life and be in prison for life. So I'm not saying that at all. Okay, let's keep going.
Taser, but that did not happen. The family of Dante Wright has said they have a hard time accepting what happened to their son on Sunday was an accident. So again, breaking news at this hour, the Washington County attorney tells CNN he has filed second-degree manslaughter charges against Potter. Now, you may remember Officer Muhammad Noor was also charged with second-degree manslaughter. He was convicted in the case of Justine Damon. And right now,
second-degree manslaughter, Fish, he was being negligent. There's no evidence she wanted to kill him. Yeah. I mean, same with Muhammad Noor.
10 miles away from where I am, Officer Derek Chauvin is on trial for the death of George Floyd. Chauvin was charged with second-degree manslaughter as well as second and third-degree murder. John?
She's probably still going to go to prison. Like, there is a likelihood that she might go to prison, just for the record. Mohammed Noor went for 12 years, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was like 12 and a half. Of course, the circumstances were a little different, i.e. Mohammed Noor was a green new officer, Muslim, Somalian descent, black. The victim in that circumstance, Justine Damon, was white, Australian immigrant. This person is literally a veteran, was played a leading role in the police union, and says multiple times that she thinks she has a taser in her fucking hands. So what? I doubt it. White women kills black guy. Black guy was running. Not to belittle a racist act, yet had previously been in possession of an unregistered firearm and went into a vehicle. Dude, you are literally running a fucking line that you heard from someone that is still unjustifiable. And two, it's not even the fucking line that the police are using. You're literally fucking trying to do mental gymnastics for cops that have already given up on doing mental gymnastics. Okay? Don't look for additional reasons as to why a horrific action occurred when cops themselves are not even running that, and usually they literally will throw the book.
Adrian brought us for us live on the scene. We'll continue to get reaction as this plays out today, and let's get some important insights now from Laura Coates, the former federal prosecutor in our CNN.
Like, if your goal is to not come across as racist, then one thing you can do is stop trying to defend extrajudicious killings of non-violent and innocent black people, black kids, 20 fucking years old, in the hands of the state, which currently has a monopoly on violence, with a cop that played judge, jury, and executioner in that moment, which is completely against what America is theoretically supposed to be about, that other cops aren't even fucking defending. Like, it's the easiest way to not look like a fucking racist, not doing what you just did by saying, not to sound like a racist, but here is why I think this is a defensible thing.
Analyst and Cedric Alexander. He was the former president of the Black Law Enforcement Officers Association. Laura, let's start with you. It's a quick movement by the prosecutor. What do you make of this charge, second-degree manslaughter?
Well, based on what we learned from the now attempted to be resigned chief, this idea of accidental, this notion here is saying that culpable negligence is going to be the standard here. Now, what does that mean, culpable negligence? It means that you were grossly negligent and reckless in your behavior. You created an unreasonable risk that would lead to death or bodily harm. And so you've got this 10-year penalty as a ceiling of it. But on that notion, this is very early on in the prosecution's case now. It could be graduated.
They didn't even try to defend her, dude. It literally took one day for the cops to be like, no, it was an accident. Sorry. Like, there's just no way. She's going to take a plea deal. They're going to accelerate this through the court system as quickly as possible. She's probably going to fucking take a plea deal and get like, maybe not 10 years, but because if that's the roof, probably get like lower because of the plea deal. And then she'll be out on good behavior in like probably fucking 2. You know what I mean? Which ultimately still, trust me, which ultimately is still not the worst thing. Guys, I don't want vengeance. I want justice, okay? I do not want vengeance. I want justice. I want a cop like that to be off the streets and not to be a police officer anymore. I want a cop like that to fucking rehabilitate, okay? I'm sorry. Like, this is always my point of view. It's the accountability that police officers have never fucking seen that is leading there's the leading cause of why they are so brutal and get away with it, because they think they can get away with it. Like I already said, I already literally said what I think is just, and this motherfucker's still like, what do you think is justice? 20 years? No, I'm not saying that.
To a higher charge, there is always a chance it could
2
be
years in jail is not just for killing a person. It doesn't matter how many years the jail sentence is. As long as there is accountability and as long as that person can rehabilitate. Okay? Yeah, no, just fucking, no, yeah, just murder him, dude. I mean, they murdered someone, so murder him back. That's the way that you can fucking do justice then.
reduced. I don't see how it would be reduced, but it always could go up. Remember, Adrian just spoke about one of the officers in the past, Mohammed Noor, charged with one crime and added on the third degree. Same thing with Derek Chauvin. But it's all about whether or not this prosecution is going to be able to prove that this officer created an unreasonable risk.
Why are you posturing so neutrally on terms for punishment in this case? She was a Trump supporter and a union leader. Oh, sorry. I didn't realize that if someone is a Trump supporter and a union leader, we should murder them. I'm not posturing neutrally. I'm having a consistent position on what I believe the criminal justice system should do. Okay? I'm not posturing neutrally on this at all. Like, I find it really fucking idiotic, dude. It absolutely sucks. Her going to jail for 20 years is not going to change anything. You know that, right? Her going to jail for 20 years, 30 years, or her getting fucking capital punishment is not going to change anything. Dante is not going to come back to life. So what you have to do in that situation is figure out what the best future for as many people as possible is.
You reached for, believing it was a taser, and accidentally, purportedly got your gun. Was that reasonable for you to make that mistake? Was it reasonable for the period of time that you held the service weapon in your arm not to know that it was actually a taser? Was it reasonable as well to even fire and deploy the taser, believing, of course, it was a taser, and ultimately being the gun?
Would be a deterrent, maybe? Dude, how do you not recognize when you literally say it would be a deterrent for throwing the book at her, for other cops from doing crime in the future? You're literally fucking repeating like pro-carceral state talking points that have been launched against black people and brown people and poor people in general since the beginning of time, okay? Additional sentences are not a successful deterrence measure. It's not. If that was the case, then America would be fucking crime-free. We house 25% of the fucking caged people on this planet. Okay?
All of this goes under that same umbrella. And interestingly enough, it tracks what's happening with Derek Chauvin right now.
So let her go free. That's what I said, right? I said let her go free, right? That's what I said. No, I didn't say that. Shut the fuck up.
It's one of the charges he's now facing. But again, culpable negligence, John, is gross negligence with recklessness. And that is going to be the key to solving this particular indictment and having a conviction.
And Cedric, we've talked about the issue of police training, especially for veteran officers throughout the Chauvin trial. Now in this case, former Officer Potter, she resigned yesterday, a 26-year veteran of the force. These are dicey situations, but the argument put forward by the now resigned police chief was this was an accident. Walk us through how an officer has a handgun and a taser and how they're supposed to understand and how they're trained to have that key distinction.
Well, certainly she's been around long enough and been there since the inception of tasers when they were introduced a number of years ago, assumingly there at their department as well. So there's a rigor of training that you go through from weak side to strong side, where your service weapon is always on your strong side. What occurred here in this case is very difficult and hard to understand for the common layperson. And certainly for many police officers, it's hard to understand. Can it happen? Can it be an accident? Maybe it can under certain stressful situations. But the question becomes, is that why was a service revolver, a service weapon pulled? And in addition to that, why would it even been necessary to deploy a taser as well? So those are going to become the questions. I'm certainly going to be interested in how this case is going to evolve in listening to, at some point, the argument on the part of that officer and what was going through her mind, what was she experiencing. But for someone that's a 26-year veteran, and for this to occur, and however it occurred, you had someone to lose their life unnecessarily. And that becomes a real issue because there's a real gross negligence here that has taken place. So it'll have its day in court. But again, she'll have her day in court, yes, but not the person who lost their life.
Right, 20-year-old Dante Wright, a parent. 20-year-old Dante Wright is the person who lost his life in this episode. And Laura, walk through a little bit more what you just discussed, because I think it's important how cases can evolve.
You know what I know? Well, you know what I think personally would be accountability for this? Okay? Using the murder of Dante Wright is a changing moment. Okay? Aside from the officer going to jail, obviously, like facing some kind of punishment, still, and stopping her, preventing her from being a fucking cop, obviously, and training others in the same way that she has already. Getting officers to changing the rules of engagement and forcing officers to fucking engage in de-escalation measures rather than escalating every single fucking altercation where there's a minor traffic stop into bloody fucking murder. That would be accountability. Changing the structures would actually be positive accountability, and it would honor what happened, the horrific thing that happened to Dante Wright. So you're moving from defund to reform? I'm not moving on shit, dude. I'm not moving on anything. I'm just talking about what could happen here, okay? Defunding the police does not mean abolish the fucking police. Defunding the police literally means like demilitarize the police. A part of defunding the police is literally about demilitarizing the police. Changing the rules of engagement. Making sure that regular traffic stops do not have heavily armed fucking police officers. I think this is like a child, right? This person keeps saying like sus Among Us. Okay, no, never mind. This is literally white replacement theory Tucker Carlson talked about, and then goes Among Us, mogus, pepela, sus Among Us. Like, how the fuck do you go from this is literally white replacement theory Tucker Carlson talked about to like operating like a fucking juicer in the chat? That's how just every average chatter is in here.
Obviously, because of the unrest in the community, because of the history in the community, and perhaps even because of the proximity to Minneapolis. And we know the Chauvin trial is underway just 10 miles away. The prosecutors clearly made a decision here to act quickly to make clear that they were going to bring charges. But as you note, the investigation will continue and that can evolve. Walk through how that process works.
Well, you know, when you first become aware of an actual charge or an arrest of somebody, prosecutors routinely will make a decision about the nature of the arrest and whether it fits with a particular crime, whether they can satisfy those elements. But it is not exhaustive. We're only 2 days after, unfortunately, the killing of young Dante Wright. And so this might be the floor for the charges against this particular officer and not the ceiling. And oftentimes, as you develop the case, as you learn more information, you might increase those particular charges. One way of doing so is if you learn additional information about the statements of the officer, about the state of mind, whether this was actually an accident. All we have to go by right now is that police chief who made the comment that he believed it was accidental. And we have the video where the officer says, "Oh, expletive, I shot him." Well, that statement perhaps could be interpreted as her believing that she made a mistake, or it could be the realization that it actually had happened, or the statement of taser, taser, taser could undercut any statement that it's intentional.
How many changing moments do we need for something to actually happen with police reform? I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen. I'm just saying what could happen that would try to at least start correcting right the wrongs of the past.
And so all of this is going to be weighed right now. But remember, this is also an opportunity for officers and the defense counsel, for any defendant potentially, to talk about pleas. Because the longer and further into an investigation you get, the less likely you are to get a favorable plea offer. You want to get it close in time. Now, I'm not advocating.
Why not say demilitarize the police if you don't actually want to abolish them? Oh, I mean, some people say abolish the police, but you should ask the question to people who are police abolitionists, like, why they still believe that there should be some sort of like regulatory body, like an organization, maybe members of the community, maybe members that are democratically elected, but still some community force that engages in the act of policing to maintain a presence of law and order. Democratically elected or democratically voted upon laws and follow that up with democratically elected members that will do that. But there's still always going to be a need for a regulatory force that's kind of at the heart of living in, and I hate to say this because everyone's going to make fun of me, but living in a society. If you cohabitate, you are going to need to have some rules and regulation, and those rules and regulation could be literally fucking voted upon by a direct democratic process, if you will, to abolish nearly every single fucking unjust hierarchy. But ultimately, there will still be need for a force of individuals that govern, and a force of individuals that will still need to maintain a presence of law and order. I think the history of the police and their specific interest in defending capital at the cost of people is why it's better to abolish them than rebuild from the ground up. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that police, on the other hand, have historically always been a force that has been there to protect and serve the interests of capital rather than the interests of the people that they are supposed to protect and serve. But that does not change the reality. There still has to be fucking a group of individuals that, one, maintain a presence of law and order, and two, fucking solve crimes and shit. Like, that's always going to be there, and even apprehend people sometimes when it's necessary. Sometimes I feel like you haven't actually talked to many abolitionists. They advocate for exactly what you're talking about. Wait, is that why I always start by my statement by saying this is what abolitionists believe as well? Because I haven't talked to many abolitionists, and that's why I say this is what abolitionists even believe. Even abolitionists believe that there is still a necessity for some regulatory force. You're telling me that I'm clearly communicating some of the takes of abolitionists while stating that I don't understand what they're mentioning. Anyway, don't fucking @chatters every time I call them out, okay? Jesus Christ.
Advocating for her to be able to plead out. But this is a reality in all cases that prosecutors bring. But remember, one thing interesting in Minnesota, John, that needs to be talked about in terms of police accountability is what are the consequences? You have a 10-year penalty maximum sentence and or a fine. It might not even get to that if she's convicted of that particular crime. It might be a lesser prison sentence, if at all. But then what about things like a pension? Most officers in different jurisdictions may contemplate whether to resign or be fired and think about the consequences of, say, a conviction. Well, Minnesota is unique in many ways, and one of the ways they have been unique is that they do not have a...
Is this a joke? I'm a peanut farmer. The sheriff has caught 4 people on my land. Can you tell me anything you're saying about abolition has anything to do with me? What? I can't tell if that's like a joke or something. It has to be, right? What the fuck?
A garnishment or a forfeiture of pensions for police officers, even in the event of a conviction. And so that might factor into why you choose to resign or otherwise. And this may be something that will come up later on. It might be one of the reasons why the mayor is reluctant to accept the resignation of the officer. But again, this is tracking in a very eerie way the Derek Chauvin trial, because jurors right now in that same county are trying to grapple with a charge of second-degree manslaughter, whether Derek Chauvin created an unreasonable risk that caused the death of George Floyd. Same question now being asked of now resigned Kim Potter against what happened to Dante Wright.
No more policing.